talk. Is there a difference between freshwater and saltwater mermaids?
So, fun fact, when I was world building my homebrew world, I did look something like this up and I took notes. So I'm going to read from you the notes I collected from a bunch of people on the internet who started saying what the differences would be. I compiled what I thought would be the most applicable. So, prepare for a long rant. The differences between a freshwater and a saltwater mermaid. Starting with freshwater. In a river or lake or anything like that, you would need to be able to swim up waterfalls, hold position against currents, unless you are in a pool or slower river. This being said, freshwater would have to be more muscular, or at least have more endurance in water. A lot of lakes, rivers are dark and murky, making them need to be a bit duller in color and look similar to other mermaids in same lakes, meaning like, oh, Lake Tahoe, the mermaids there would look different from, say, Lake Michigan, but all Lake Tahoe mermaids will look similar. Okay, cool. These ones would be well suited for camouflage in the muddier, murkier waters because, again, rivers, lakes, ponds, they're not as blue as, say, the ocean. They don't need to be different colors and all that. They're allowed to be darker and duller, earthier tones. Freshwater mermaids would be covered in a slime or a mucus to keep their bodies from absorbing too much water. And they wouldn't seem to notice it probably, but we would notice if we touched them. We'd be like, what the hell? We would definitely notice. Compared to the saltwater cousins, eyesight would probably not be that great. You don't need good eyesight in murky water. Your other senses would be developed stronger. You'd be more relying on touch, smell, hearing, and echolocation type stuff, not visual. You would have good sight, but probably no better than a normal human. Due to the nature of the water cycle and their size, a freshwater mermaid would need to be able to spend periods of time outside of water, either looking for a new water body to live in, or to live in shallow or stagnant water. So they'd be more amphibious than, say, the ocean-dwelling ones. A freshwater mermaid would look something more like an Amazonian woman. Again, back to my first point about having to be going up waterfalls, fighting against currents, or just constantly floating in stagnant water. Well, not stagnant, but static water. They'd be more muscular in the human part. So think Amazonian woman with a more function-based tail that's constantly ready to, like, move them as needed. In warmer areas, a freshwater mermaid would be at risk of creatures like crocodiles and alligators, so they have to be fast and agile, as well as able to not so much intimidate, but remind the crocodile, you may be dangerous, but I am an apex. But a freshwater mermaid in the cold area would be more slow and relaxed, say like a manatee, because they don't have as many predators. Freshwater mermaids would also have longer fingers to allow them to sift through mud or dirt or silt, whatever is on the bottom of the water, to find food or whatever, similar to a dolphin's snout. The more limited space of freshwater environments may mean that freshwater mermaids won't be as picky in their diet. They'd be like, food is food. We're not really gonna turn our nose up at something just because, oh, I'm not in the mood. They're gonna be like, hey, we live in this environment. This is what's available. This is what we eat. Now we get to the saltwater. This one's gonna seem a lot shorter because I wrote it originally together, but then I divided it for my own note-taking. In the open ocean, a lot of the time, you can just swim and avoid obstacles. So compared to the freshwater ones who have to be more stronger and be able to like resist a current, the ocean mermaids probably aren't as built in terms of like, they don't need to be. They can be more loungy in their movements and all that. Hell, they don't need to worry about doing as much because, again, it's so vast, you can just avoid an obstacle. You don't need to worry about like, oh, the current is the only way I'm going to get somewhere. You can go find another direction. Saltwater mermaids would show more variance in color and fish shape due to large habitat. Sharks, clownfish, lionfish, whale, dolphin, like there'd be a variety in their appearance as there is in the ocean. They would be better suited for combat on account of how many predators are in the ocean. That being said, because the ocean is so wide and vast, they have access to every major coastal city, so they're probably the most social. They are more suited for combat and survival, though they've encountered enough land dwellers. They're like, no, we're more likely to interact with you, whereas the freshwater are more naive and cautious, not wanting to take risks because, well, I don't blame them. So despite the myths we would spread about mermaids, the saltwater ones are more like, oh, sup, how you doing? Don't get me wrong, they would still lure people to their dooms, but they're not going to be like, oh my god, what the fuck are you? If they saw us, they'd be like, oh, sup, Charlie, and move about their day. Sight would have to be phenomenal for saltwater mermaids. Between the light level changes at different depths, the level of camouflage other aquatic species use just to survive, a saltwater mermaid would have to have perfect, if not better, level of sight. Especially, also, they'd have to have better senses overall because, again, echolocation, sight, smell, everything. They would have to be able to have heightened awareness all the time. Those who live in the vast open ocean would have to be very fast, agile, and streamlined to avoid any predator. Compared to, say, the ones who live closer to the shore, they could be more like manatees and just chill out because very rarely would most oceanic predators come close to shore. Also, back to the freshwater, how I had said they had to have a limited diet, so they're not going to be as picky. Due to saltwater environments being so diverse, saltwater mermaids probably are more specialist in their diet. Could be based on region, it could be based on season, it could even be based on just personal preference. There would be more diversity in their diet. These are just some of the things I had in my notes because I distinctly, when I was world building, was like, I don't want mermaids just to be like the stereotype, oh, they're all the exact same. I wanted to have, as you suggested, is there a fresh versus saltwater difference? That's what I got. The general idea, though, would be freshwater ones are like Amazonian, earthy toned, bulky, long-fingered, and like cautious, though powerful. Saltwater, streamlined, agile, more lithe probably, though they're more social. Yes, they are dangerous. Do not fuck with the saltwater ones. But they're not going to start shit. They're going to be the ones who defend themselves and end it. I would also suggest saltwater ones are probably way more learned, educated, because of all this access to coastal cities. Freshwater ones, not saying they're unintelligent or uneducated, but they are looking at a limited source of education. They don't leave their environment as much. They don't have as much access to outside of their biosphere. So the saltwater ones would make the freshwater ones have a vast difference in knowledge. I think there should be a I forget the term for any kind of fish that can go between the two, but I think those would be rare amongst both, only because given how much mermaids already defy most nature, that would be even a rarer occurrence. Oh, you're half mammal, half fish? That's rare. Oh, you're not only half water, half fish, you can both do salt and freshwater? What the fuck? You are weird. And I don't mean weird bad, I mean weird as in no one has a common understanding of it. So yes, there is a difference. It should be explored, and also it should be treated with the respect it deserves, because mermaids are fascinating. Don't paint them all with the same brush and be boring. Be creative and use nature as your inspiration. So, first of all, I want to preface, I didn't come up with those ideas. Those were notes I took based on other people's observation based on different aquatic life. So my observation in my video was based more so on like what did other people observe, and I took the most commonly repeated threads and I combined them to make what I made. So just getting that out of the way. Ocean floor, Mermaids, I think, would be they would be very bioluminescent. Yep. I don't want to say they'd be asymmetrical in design, but I do think um, they would look more alien, more Lovecraftian. Probably, yes, there is a humanoid aspect to them, but it's very less than normal. I think if it is a strictly seafloor mermaid, you'd be getting these more. I don't want to say it this way, but it's probably the best way to describe it. Predator-esque mermaids, in the sense that they are less aesthetically pleasing. They'd be more function only because they have to be. We're talking like long fingers and claws, jagged teeth, and like very anglerfish type mouths, big eyes that are like extremely huge pupils to let what little light reach them. The bioluminescences, the reds. They probably have more, as you described, the shark features. It would be very Lovecraftian and alien looking. I do not think it would be anything we normally would ascribe to a typical mermaid. To this end, I think they wouldn't be able to climb to higher depths either, because of how they've been so adapted to the seafloor. It'd be very, very rare that we see any coming to like where normal mermaids would be, and it's very possible they would be almost cannibalistic, in the sense that like other mermaids, that's their boogeymen. They warn their children, don't go too deep or you'll wind up in their clutches. I think they would be the nightmares of the typical oceanic mermaids. But that's just a guess on a quick whim. Something definitely ponder is, what would an ocean floor, like deeper than deep Marianas Trench type mermaid be? The best thing I could think of would definitely be like something alien. An alien as in like to us. We would never ascribe human anything to it. We'd be terrified by it because we couldn't comprehend it. So, just so everyone who watches this knows, when I talk about my homebrew world, I operate in Pathfinder, so my merfolk may be different than a 5e's merfolk. Cool? So, jellyfish people. I have no problems with them. Personally, I'm very much the idea of like, well, what type of jellyfish are you talking about? And I mean that as in like, do you want them to be 50-50 human jellyfish, or do you want it to be a human with jellyfish features? I would work with the player in question to be like, well, what exactly are you looking for? Because, for example, someone may be thinking of this very lovely design made by this person on DeviantArt, or they may be talking about something like this, where the jellyfish features are more like clothing. This is made by that person on GM Binder, if you want more. So with that said, I would work with them first in the what type of jellyfish person are they looking for, then go from there. Then we would look into real-world jellyfish of the many varieties and determine what their appearance would look like, how they would behave, and what their nature would be. Because in Pathfinder, merfolk are pretty standard in the sense of like they're secretive, they're prone to intense xenophobia because they live under the water and they don't want to deal with the surface world. They value privacy and more likely to react to surfacers with aggression more than friendship because of history. My homebrew world, though, I would be like, it depends on the region. Would it be the oceanic merfolk? Would it be the lake or freshwater merfolk? Would it be ones who had a bad experience due to the nearest continent? It would all depend on that. So, blanket-wise, I would first communicate extremely with the player to first find out what their intention is, and then we go from there to try getting the best collaborative concept that they want while maintaining my world's worldliness. If it winds up being that what they want just doesn't work, I would be like, well, we can't do a jellyfish person. Could we, in fact, maybe do something else? And then we would go from there. But it would really have to depend. I would have to know way more about someone's wants other than just jellyfish person, because I'd be like, well, what kind of jellyfish person are we talking? As we know, there are many variants of the jellyfish, and to lump them all into one pile would be kind of a disservice to not only the jellyfish, but to the person who wants to make the character. Hopefully that's a good enough answer. I'm kind of limited right now. TikTok's not giving me my normal 10-minute video options. I only have a few minutes, so I'm going to try compressing both into one vid. I'm going to base all this on what my world would be like. So, other people's worlds, I can't speak for. I would say that Arctic mermaids have thicker layer of fat or blubber on their body to keep warm. Only because the water's freezing, and when they go above water for any reason, the wind will be freezing more so because they're soaking wet. They're guaranteed probably have an all fish diet versus like a diverse one because generally speaking, most plants that would grow in a polar region would be more inland. So unless they have a way to get in closer to land, they won't be able to access the plant life. They would be eating more fish, so they'd have sharper teeth, sharper clawed hands, and probably be more like carnivorous. They probably would be secluded as well. Not many people, surface-wise, live in polar regions, so it goes to reason most mermaids would not be that social other than with other Arctic mermaids. Tropical ones would probably be way more social. And that I say because, like in our world, tropical locations are heavily populated on the surface, on the coasts, so we have a lot of travel, tourism, stuff like that. These tropical mermaids who, more than likely because of the warm water and all that, they are more social, they're more friendly, they're more interacting with the surface world. And again, because the location, they probably have a more diverse diet of things like fruits, fish, maybe even human food that we just trade with them that can actually stand being in the water for a period of time. Coloring wise, I would say that the Arctic mermaids are more grays, whites, blues, more polar colors. The tropical ones would be more like iridescent. They'd be more pinks, reds, greens, blues, purples. They'd be more cacophony of color. There would be no like similarity across the spectrum. Arctic mermaids may be even amongst their own solitary in terms of like traveling. They may stick to only families, like family groups, whereas tropical mermaids may have larger pods, communities that they travel with at all the same time, especially given the fact that they may have saw how we behave and either mimicked it to give us a sense of comfort, or they realized it's safer in numbers. Because while yes, there are predators in the Arctic, they're probably not going to be as bothering the Arctic mermaids as the predators in a tropical ocean may. That's just a guess on how I would do it in my home world. Not everyone's, so hopefully that's a good answer. So just I'm focusing mostly on the size part because they're apex predators. Just because that one jumped out of me. Given that we're speaking in the tabletop realm, specifically for this context, I would make the position merfolk for the open ocean at their biggest would probably be about the same size of it as an orc, stone giant, or a furbolg. So like nothing more than 10 feet tall from head to tip of their tail. They may be very muscular, but not so much that it's like more than 2 human height at full length. Only because, while yes, the orca is one of the biggest apex predators on Earth, we also have the Komodo dragon, the snow leopard, the leopard seal, and technically speaking, humans are apex predators. If I remember right, also some sharks are apex predators, but you know, that's a different story. Point being, yes, apex predators have to be dangerous and good at like intimidation and size. We do have examples of smaller apex predators being just as dangerous. Also, because merfolk are humanoid-ish, we're implying that they have the humanoid capacity for tool use, ingenuity, pack hunting, etc., where they may lack size, they make up for weapons, ingenuity, communication, stuff like that, so that they don't need to be physically imposing size-wise. They could be mentally more creative and be more dangerous because they're like raptors from Jurassic Park or something to that effect. They would definitely have to be dangerous apex predators, or at least close to apex. Because I would imagine that, yes, mermaids wouldn't be like shark level apex, but they definitely would probably have very few, if no, threats to them in the way that like other aquatic species have. But because they are humanoid, I imagine they would still be susceptible to other dangerous predators in the ocean, like sharks, orcas, etc. But yeah, no, size-wise, I really do think it would probably be in the range of like an orc, furball, stone giant, or yeah, those three seem like a good like situation. So like 8 to 10, maybe 11 feet from head to end of their tails at full length. That's my guess. So hear me out. I think any anadromous, that's the word. Anadromous mermaid would be very rare. They would be similar to like salmon. And I mean that as in not every fish can do what a salmon does. These fish wouldn't go back and forth between the ocean and the freshwater willy-nilly. It would be specific for either mating or some ritualistic reason. It would be very functional, not pleasure, I guess. Yeah, it'd be business over pleasure. Maybe it's seasonal. Maybe it's tied to the phases of the moon, whatever. I think there would also be like a life cycle thing. Maybe they are born in the fresh water, and once they reach maturity, they go out to the ocean. Maybe they are they're born and raised in the ocean, but as they get older and then before they die, they go to fresh water. Something to that effect. And during their life cycle, they would probably go through subtle changes to get ready for that transition. I don't think it would be a case of like, oh, I spend summers in the freshwater, winters in the ocean. No, I think it'd be like you spend a vast majority of your life in one, and then the rest of your life in the other. I believe that because, again, this would be a rare subsect of merfolk, both sides, the oceanic and the freshwater ones, they wouldn't treat them badly, but they'd be very much like, you're doing your own thing, we'll do our thing and like leave you to it. It would be very much a case of like, not everyone's born one, but like 1 in 10 have that chance. Or they're a result of a human mating with a merfolk or something. Like there would be special conditions to make one, and even more special conditions on the conditions on why they transition from one to the other. From my homebrew world, because I have 3 moons, I'm one of those nerds who likes multiple moons and multiple suns, I would definitely have it play up to the moon. Well, moons. Like every so many phases of the moon, when they line up a certain way or something, at a certain age, these mermaids are called from one setting to the other. Be it, again, they lived in salt water their whole life and they're about to die, they go off to the fresh water to do that. Or they lived in fresh water their whole lives, they go out to sea to die. I don't know. Whatever the case, I think this would be definitely a case to be like deeper bouncing ideas off of, especially because I don't know many species of fish that do bounce between fresh and salt water. I know there are some, but I don't know much about them other than the salmon. So I'd have to like really pour into the knowledge on those things. So trust me when I say I had to Google a lot before I answered this, because I had an answer, but I wanted to like get it just right. So it may stumble my way through, but I'm gonna get there. If I was to include dimorphism, I would also include the caveat that, like the 500 or more species of fish that we have found that can change their sex, the dimorphism would be controllable, in that you could be born assigned male at birth, but come to realize you're trans, and your body would do the natural transitioning to meet the presentation that you would want. And I wouldn't just do a binary, I would have a spectrum. That way, while, yes, you could probably look at them and be like, male, female, gender fluid, whatever, there would be enough dimorphism to know specific points. You would also be able to tell someone is able or is going through the transitioning to what they want to be. Therefore, yes, there's a spectrum of gender, there's a spectrum of sex. It's not stigmatized that, oh, you were born this way, that's what you are. No, it's you were born this way, but how do you feel you should be? Because again, there are more than 500 species of fish that regularly change sex as adults. I don't see a reason why merfolk can't be the same. Mermaids should be able to change their gender and sex as needed at will for their own purposes, and it should be no one's business. So if there's going to be dimorphism, I would give the caveat that the dimorphism is tied enough to the brain where they can engage in the shift as needed. I think that made sense. I definitely stumbled through that, but I think I made sense. Hopefully I did. I grabbed part 1 of your comments. I did read all 3, so don't worry. I don't dislike your idea. I like the idea. Personally, if I was doing this, I would have mermaid be the umbrella term and all the things you described be types of mermaids, if that makes sense. Okay, very niche nerd moment maybe. I like how in Aquaman, the movies, and technically the comics, Atlanteans weren't just human. They also had the crab people, the shark people, the fish. Like, they had different types of aquatic humanoids, but they were all Atlantean in that they had the umbrella term of Atlantean, and then the subsets were specific. So, like, all the things you listed could be subsets of mermaid, but the mermaid that we think of is the common thread amongst all these regions, along with these offshoots. So in a way, you could say it's like a really bad maybe example, but like how humans, Neanderthals, and apes, we're all apes, but we're also different, if that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense. In my head, I'm totally making sense. I like your idea. I'm just spitballing how I would handle it. I would treat them as, again, humans, monkeys, orangutans, apes, Neanderthals, all one super species, but then we have individual species. I really hope I'm talking some form of sense. I am not an expert in any kind of science of biology. I am literally just a guy who makes shit up and hopes to God people like it. So I'm hoping for the best here. I do like your idea, though, especially this idea that, like, yes, all the creatures you listed are not predatory by nature, but like they could be competitive. Giving mermaids these creatures as competition would be no different than giving humans the litany of things we compete with on surface. I definitely see it as viable and a cool concept, and especially because a lot of the ones you listed are sentient enough to have communities, cultures of their own, making the competition, the predatory nature, whatever you want to call it, more dynamic than just, ooh, me hungry, you food. It would be very deep and rich lore you could explore and take anywhere. Totally love the idea. I'm just yapping, I guess. I want to preface this in no bad way, so if my tone conveys that I might be antagonistic or bad, it's not that way. I promise. It is bold of anyone to assume that I've thought beyond anything of the original video. I am, 9 videos deep into this rabbit hole? I'm making this all up as I go, and I'm fucking just hoping people like it. I have not thought beyond the original video where I described the difference between salt and fresh water. After that, I've been just like, ooh, that stuck to the wall? Cool, that's the new answer, we're going. Anyway, I'm just glad people are enjoying my content enough to keep asking questions. It's nice. To answer your question whether I think they would cycle oxygen through gills and lungs or with a gas bladder, I don't know what a gas bladder is in the sense where I can speak with authority. What I do know about oceanic creatures is that I think it would be probably akin to a set of gills and lungs scenario, very much like whales. Well, whales have a blowhole, but the point being they would have lungs and gills. Maybe some would have blowholes. I don't know. Maybe the oceanic ones would be gills or blowhole. The fresh water would strictly be gills. I'm literally making this up as I go, so please don't think I'm being an authority. I also would be entirely cool with the idea of like them having a membrane that when they're in the water, the membrane's semi-permeable and allows oxygen to filter through. That would be cool because my brain thinks back to the Gungans on Star Wars. Oda Gunga was in these bubble cities that the membrane was able to allow oxygen and organic stuff through, but not the water. So, like, maybe all the mer people have this sticky membrane that allows the air to go through when they're underwater, but above water, the membrane just washes off. I am flying blind and making shit up, and whatever people seem to like, I'm saying, cool, that's the answer we're going with. I am at the whims of the people who probably know a lot more than me and probably thought about this a lot more than me. I never thought about mermaids this much until this week, and I'm just happy for the exercise and creativity and along for the ride because, damn, I didn't think this might be what I leave on the internet for people to be talking about me regarding. Hi, my name is JM, and I didn't think about mermaids this much, but apparently that's what I'm doing this week. Okay, so I don't think you mean it the way that it's coming off, so I'm going to explain why I don't think you should hold that mentality anymore. Okay, anyway, what you're describing, it would border on essentialism, which is that something has to be a certain way because of its what it is. An example in fantasy would be, all drow have to be evil elves. All goblins are evil. All orcs are violent. It's this idea that because of your ancestry, you are locked into certain characteristics. You are not allowed to be unique. I, again, do not think that's how you meant it. I do not think that's why you think it, because I want to assume the best. So when I say for the creator to say it doesn't have to be this way, I mean to get away from lazy, racist, bad storytelling, we need to break away from this idea that the circumstances of your ancestry determine your moral compass. Yes, in the past, this may have been the common lore. We can change it. It's fiction. We don't have to adhere to it. There's no rule saying, all freshwater mermaids must be nice, while all saltwater ones must be evil and vindictive. No one says you have to. Personally, I like the idea that it doesn't matter fresh or saltwater. External stimuli will determine the culture of these merfolk. How do surface dwellers treat them to determine how they treat us? It could very well be that the saltwater ones are nicer because the surface dwellers are like, yo, they're cool. Let's be friends. Where the freshwater ones are like, no, you backwater assholes hunt us, so we hate you. And that could explain a lot because the further you are from diversity, the more likely you are to be prejudiced. So freshwater ones and surface dwellers near freshwater sources could be far, far from diversity, where both sides become prejudiced towards each other. It could be very well flipping what you're suggesting. So again, I am not suggesting that you're doing this because you have these tendencies or these views. I'm just letting you know, hey, to hold such a black and white view can lead to essentialistic thinking, which can be a problem in storytelling and real life. I try to break away from it whenever I notice it, so I hope that anything that I suggest would be like, no, we don't do essentialism here. Essentialism bad. Good question. Had to Google this because I wanted to make sure I got this right, because I remember there's a difference between a swamp, a bog, and a fen, so I want to get this right. There are two types of swamps, freshwater and saltwater. Swamps are dominated by trees. They are often named for the type of trees that grow in them, such as a cypress swamp, hardwood swamp. Freshwater swamps are commonly found inland, while saltwater swamps are found along the coast. So, that being said, honestly, my ruling would be take the rules of a freshwater mermaid or a saltwater mermaid and just apply it to a swamp. Like, there would be no difference. I don't know if people were expecting a difference, but because it is just, what's it called? Just because it's a wetland, it would still follow the same rules as is it salt water or fresh water. And given that most swamps are they're essentially flooded forests, you'd be looking at like low mermaid population because they wouldn't. I don't want to say that they're not deep enough for a culture, but like unless you have like really really deep swamp water, they wouldn't really have much space to grow a community in the water part. We'd probably be getting yay Star Wars nerd here, something akin to Gungans, and I say that like not to be a troll. I mean that seriously. We'd probably have something very close to Gungans, but more mermaidish. So very amphibian. Because swamps, again, they are flooded forests, so you'd want something that could sustain itself above the water long term if it needs to. It's like 3:30 a.m. and I'm just like throwing at a wall and hoping something good comes out. Don't know if that's actually a satisfying answer or not. So no, you're totally fine with this thought because, fun fact, I had to Google just to look up because I didn't know if the answer was either. Water from swamps may be fresh water, brackish water, or seawater. Freshwater swamps form along large rivers or lakes where they are critically dependent upon rainwater and seasonal flooding to maintain natural water level fluctuations. Saltwater swamps are found along tropical or subtropical coastlines. So this idea that, as you said, like have them be like a mini hunting ground, a nursery for like the younger merm people would be perfect because again, the larger lakes, rivers, or even the coastline, these swamps would be small enough and just off enough where they'd be safer and can be like protected. Would make perfect sense. No, you actually had a good theory and it's backed up by how naturally occurring swamps are in nature. So no, you're definitely onto something, and it makes good sense within the idea of how mer people would protect their young, given that look how most aquatic species protect their young from predators. No, you're onto something. It's a really good theory, and it's a damn good way of doing it, regardless of how much you do or do not know. Kudos. Good job. You did good. I know the answer to this one. I don't even need to talk about like my own homebrew stuff. This is just me being a mythology nerd. So, in the modern day, yes, many people think sirens and mermaids are analogous, the same. They weren't, aren't, don't have to be. First of all, not every mermaid myth has them luring sailors to their doom. That's kind of like a modern thing. Across history and across cultures, mermaids have always been half person, half aquatic creature. Fish, eel, whatever. Sirens weren't. Sirens were originally described to be birds flying over the sea, and then when they were luring the men to their doom, they were on rocks. They were, the best way to describe it, seagulls perching on stones in the ocean, with their faces of women and their beautiful voices, enchanting the sailors and luring them to their deaths. So, when people say, oh, you're describing a siren, no, I'm describing merfolk. Sirens were more harpies. And harpies are different than sirens because harpies, well, that's a whole different topic. I'm not talking about harpies. Sirens and mermaids are different. Yes. Over time, the shifting image happened. I believe that has a lot to do, I don't have a source on me, I believe it had a lot to do with the spread of Christianity. Hear me out. The Christianization spread throughout the world in the medieval times really did harm women, depicting them as, quote unquote, sirens luring men to their doom, not just on the ocean, but in morality. So, when we associate mermaids with beautiful women with fish tails, and we also associate women with sirens, over time, the three start to blend. So, again, that's a theory, not an actual source thing. While, yes, many, many people do today think all sirens and mermaids are the same, no. Many mermaids are different. Sirens originally were closer to harpies. And if you played Yu-Gi-Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking when I say harpy. Bird women. I'm a nerd, sorry. So yeah, mythology nerd moment. Sirens, bird ladies with the faces of women but the bodies of birds, luring men to die by the sound of their voice. Mermaids, fish ladies, or merfolk, fish people, who could but didn't always. Hope that helps. So my homebrew world is based in Pathfinder, not D&D 5e, so I'm using Pathfinder's rules. The rules for merfolk would be the following. They can begin the game, like during character creation, knowing Common and Aquan. If they have a high intelligence score, they can choose between Aboleth, Aklo, Draconic, Elven, or Sylvan. For those who do not know, Sylvan is like the Fae from the Feywild. Aklo, I forget what it is. I literally just woke up and I can look it up afterwards and put in the comments for those who are curious. Aboleth is like it's a weird language. Don't worry about it. Also in Pathfinder, I forget in 5e. I don't know if this applies, but in Pathfinder, any character can spend any amount of time. I think it's like a couple weeks learning a new language if they have a resource or a teacher. For example, if you have a character that wants to learn Draconic and you find a book on Draconic, if you spend 2 weeks reading the book, you now learn Draconic. Or if you find a teacher, you can learn Draconic. So, to answer your question, they could communicate like humans or surface dwellers based on their intelligence score, and many of them would know Common as a trade language. Aquan would be what they speak amongst themselves underwater. Would it sound like whales? Maybe. Would it sound like any other sea creatures? Maybe. I think that would depend mostly on the player, like what flavor they want to give it, or the GM, what type of what type of rules they want to give their version of Merfolk. That would be very, very game specific. But to answer your question, this is how the Mer people would speak. Hopefully that helps. Also, really quick thought of it, because we're saying freshwater and saltwater mermaids are different, Aquan would be the same across the planet. There would probably just be regional dialects, just like how in America there's Texan, Californian, Midwest, Southern, New England, New Jersey, like all the different regional dialects of English. They're all English, but there's clearly a difference between where you are and how you speak it. Hi, Harpies. I'm going to do some rapid fire stuff because I only have like 3 minutes. So the Harpies are the daughters of Thauma, or Thamas, who's the son of Gaia in the Oceanid Electra. They are seen as bad luck due to coming out of nowhere and stealing or destroying property or wreaking havoc on people's lives. They are the hounds of Zeus. I'm not a fan of anything being tied to Zeus. Not even the Harpies deserve this, but it's because they're in his dominion, the sky. They are oftentimes sent by Zeus, Hera, or Athena to punish those who have angered the gods. They are told to be always ravenous, stealing food, or even eating their victims before fully carrying them away. They're generally blamed for if anyone goes missing or suddenly you lose stuff and it's been taken. Mythology differs on the numbers. Some myths say there are dozens of harpies, others say 1 to 4. I'm going to butcher the names, I apologize, but I will I'll say the names best I can, and I'll put in parentheses for the subtitles what the name means. Alo, Akapite, Pordage, and Kaleno. Again, I apologize to anyone who's Greek and I butchered your language. I'm sorry. In order they meant Rainstorm, Swift Flyer, Lightfoot, Stormcloud. The Harpies are the sisters to Iris, the personification of the rainbow, and they are most known that I remember being tied to the Aeneid. When Aeneas, after the Trojan War, was searching for Rome, him and his men wound up on Strophades Island, where, again, if I say any of these wrong, I'm sorry, where the Harpies were residing, and the Harpies harassed the Trojans countlessly whenever they would go to eat. Aeneas, sick of this bullshit, told his men to fight back. Well, Caleno told Aeneas him and his men would suffer a terrible hunger for trying to kill her and her sisters, and the city of which they're looking for, Rome, would not be found until they had gone so hungry that they ate their tables. Metal as fuck. Now, the Harpies' depiction, my memory, and just what I remember, always differed in terms of were they full bird with woman head body, or were they full woman with like bird appendages? It all depends on who's telling the story, in my experience. I don't think there was a 100% canonized depiction. I personally prefer the more like full woman with like the bird wing appendages and like the sharp razor claw talons like eagles, but that's just me. This was a really rapid fire thing on Harpies. If I had access to my 10-minute videos again, but TikTok took away, I would tell more, but I don't. So hopefully that's a good enough vid.